Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and today we are going to have a look at the flight dynamics in the new Fenix BFU update. They have changed, and today we're going to explore how the new manual flight model looks like by doing a couple of traffic patterns, and within those we are of course also going to have a look at how the new landing model feels like. Now, I would say we get straight into this. I will start by going over how to set the airplane up for traffic patterns first, because that is a question that I get every now and then, so I want to answer it in this video as well. But first of all, the most important thing, that's actually your controls. Make sure that you remove any slope that might have been applied to your controls. So no sensitivity setting, just neutral. That is how Fenix has reprogrammed it with the BFU update. Now, this is something that I've personally asked for quite a while already, because it's a fly-by-wire aircraft. You don't need fixed control slopes. You can program all of that right into the flight controls as a developer, and that way you don't mess with any other aircraft that users might be using. Alright, and now let's get straight into this. We're going to start with a general flight deck setup over here. Obviously we are on the runway, so let's bring the aircraft into a takeoff state. For this, I'm just going to go over the panel using the standard flow sequence over here. We will keep the packs on for our takeoff, since traffic patterns do require quite a lot of attention already, so you don't really want to mess with any of that. Now today we have a QNH of 1019, flight directors will be on. Look off the constraints, VOR 10 mile range, and the altitude is going to go to 1,500 feet above field elevation. Field elevation over here 300, that means we'll fly a pattern in 1,800 feet. Like this. The benefit of flying them at this altitude is that you get a nice timing for the downwind, and therefore you get to fly a nice little final of about a minute flight time. Alright, so down here everything is set, weather radar is on, and with that we have finished the flight deck preparation. Now let's go down into the FMS. I am using my WinRing MCU to operate this, but I will talk about exactly what I'm doing so that you guys can follow along. We're going to start by going to the config screen up there and then to the fuel page, and we will upload some 10 tons of fuel. That gives us ample options to fly our patterns. Now the zero fuel weight will be set to something like 55 tons. That brings us to a gross weight of 65. But be aware that Fenix sometimes needs you to insert this stuff several times so that it actually accepts it. Now, with our fuel and load added to the aircraft, we can go ahead and start our FMS setup. So we start on the init page and we go Echo Golf Bravo Bravo as departure, and the same thing as destination. We don't need to add an alternate, we don't need to add a flight number, but we don't want to leave any boxes, so I'm just going to call ourselves Airbus 320. Cost index doesn't matter, and the cruise level always needs to be a flight level, so 018 equals 1800. Then we can go to the flight plan page, select our departure, and we are sitting on runway 33 over here, so let's select that. We don't need any sit, so just press insert. Now we do the same for the arrival. Select the arrival airport, but don't select any instrument approach, just select the runway. So just runway 33, and that's it. Insert. Now we can go over to the fix info page, and over here you can add a radial that's adjacent to the departure runway. You don't have to do that though. So for example, if I enter Birmingham 33 as reference fix, then I could now, since we are going to fly a left-hand pattern from the left-hand seat, enter a 90-degree radial over here. So with a current course of 325 as runway heading, we go 90 degrees to the left, then we end up at 235. And if we enter that as radial, you will see that we have now marked our exact position where we are abeam the landing runway threshold, and we can use that to start our downwind timing. Okay, that much about the fix info. Now let's go on to the fuel prediction page and enter our zero fuel weight, which is 55, and the CG, let's look that up. That's on config and fuel. CG 26.6. So 55/26.6. Enter. Alright, now let's go on to the takeoff performance calculator. We are in Echo Golf Bravo Bravo. Runway is 33, it's a dry runway. I have changed the real world weather, it's now 290 at 10, temperature 21, and 1019er. Like this. Now, Flight Simulator has that unfortunate tendency to spawn you at the displaced threshold rather than the threshold, which in this case is several hundred meters that we're losing, so be sure that you calculate an appropriate intersection, like this one over here. And if you don't know what that one's called, just go to the drone cam and read the taxiway signs. It's a little unfortunate. So this is Echo 1 over here, with 2,552 meters. Alright, so we're going to take Echo. Okay, you can have your takeoff weight first. It was 65 tons, and then intersection Echo. So CG is 26.6. Alright, and now everything's entered, so calculate, and here we go with our takeoff data. So we have a takeoff shift of 500. So performance 500. Then it wants the flaps to take off with an up trim of 0.4. Flex temperature 65 degrees. And the takeoff speed is 138, 138, 141. So ensure that you've entered noise abatement procedure number 2, so that you actually accelerate below the traffic pattern altitude. And an out acceleration is in 1500, that's okay. And now we definitely also want to enter or fill out the approach page already. So I've got a QNH of 1019, 21 degrees, the wind is 290 at 10. We don't need a minimum since we are going to do visual approaches. And the reason you want to fill all of this stuff out is because you don't really have time to do that in the traffic pattern. So work ahead as far as you can. Alright.
Traffic.
Interesting, we're getting a TCAS on the ground. Cool. Haven't seen that one before. Alright, cool. So with that, our setup is pretty much done. Then let's ensure that our flaps match the FMS setting. Performance on the left, flight plan on the right. The other way around if the first officer was pilot flying. Then we can hit the takeoff config button and everything's looking good. And you should also be on QNH. Alright, and that's pretty much all we need for our preparation. So normally I would say save the state so that you can load it anytime. Unfortunately Fenix doesn't support that just yet, hopefully at some time in the future. And with that, we're basically ready to go. Alright, so very quick review before we take off. How are we going to fly this traffic pattern? Basically you have to fly it all raw data. So once we're airborne and once we're past the acceleration altitude, flight directors off, bird on. Retract the flaps into the 1 position, pull the S speed, or alternatively just activate the approach phase already. That also fixes the S speed as target. You can use the auto thrust as you wish. And then once we are level in 1800, we make a left-hand turn onto the downwind. We aim to be at about a 2.5 mile downwind, so that's exactly on this part of the nav display here. Respectively, in the air you want the runway symbol, on the 2.5 mile symbol there. Once you are abeam the landing runway threshold, start the timing. 3 seconds for every 100 feet above the field elevation, so that's 45 seconds minus the tailwind that you have, or plus the headwind as it fits. And Then before you turn base, flaps 2. Once you're on base, gear down, flaps 3. If you plan a flap full landing, you can also go flaps full at that point. Turn final, and then we do our touch and go, and I'll talk you through everything. Remember, we are primarily doing this to analyze the new flight dynamics of the Fenix Airbus here. So this is a little bit of a mixed video here. It's not intended as a tutorial, but I'm sure you'll be able to use it as one. Okay, so that's everything done. So let's go ahead and enjoy our airplane. Parking brake is released. Takeoff. Stabilize 50%. Stick half forward. Stabilized. Manflex 65 SRS runway auto thrust blue. Thrust set. $80 knots. Stick slowly back to neutral so that it reaches neutral at 100 knots. And that's cross-checked. V1 rotate. So, the rotation law has definitely been worked on. In the real world you need about 2/3 of aft stick to get the airplane airborne, and in the Fenix you need exactly that as well now. So the rotation has definitely been much improved. So, positive climb, gear up. So, 1300. Speed alt star. Flaps 1. Speed checked, flaps 1. Activate approach phase. That way it is going to target the S speed. Then flight directors off, bird on. Set downwind track, which will be about 150. And here we go. So with that, we're up in the air, and we are now flying. So, as I briefly mentioned earlier, the rotation is really better. So in the real world, what I usually do is that I'm pulling the stick back until it reaches the 7.5 degree symbol. And that's when the nose slowly starts to come up if the airplane is in trim. It isn't always because load sheets aren't entirely accurate, but that would be a different story. But you can really replicate this with the Fenix Airbus as well now, and that feels really good. So that's something that I definitely appreciate them doing. So apart from that, nice 25 degree bank should get us onto a 2.5 mile downwind. We can already see that the winds are rather significant, which we'll have to take into consideration when we plan our final turn. So, reaching downwind track, 150. So, let's clean up the FMS. That's flight plan, direct, center fix, radial in, insert. Approach phase is already active, and we've got 30 knot tailwind, almost. Let's call it 28, so we'll take 45 minus 28 seconds for the downwind. Right, passing the beam point now, starting the timing. And 45 minus 28 is 17, so we're looking for 17 seconds to start the base turn. Flaps 2. And here we go, 17 seconds, starting the base turn. 25 degrees angular bank. And then set the runway track, please, which is 325. Here we go, no auto brake, and that's it. So we can start a slow descent already. Gear down. Flaps 3.
Don't sink. Don't sink.
Yes, do sink. We want to sink.
Don't sink.
Back. Alright, and flaps full. So, once the field is inside, look at the puppy. We're on 3 whites at the moment, so descend down into the puppies. The landing checklist will come up at 800 feet on the radio altimeter, so wait for that. And here we go, right in the puppies. So, I have turned up the realistic turbulence again, because otherwise this wouldn't be fun. Now, what am I expecting from this landing? Basically, at 50 feet, nothing. 40, nothing. 30, we're expecting a nose-down input. The flare itself should be started between 20 and 30 feet. So, I'm gonna wait until the nose-down input onsets, and then I'm going to flare. In previous versions of the Fenix Airbus, you would almost be unable to save the airplane, and you would be almost guaranteed to crash it into the ground. If they've done it right, that is not going to happen any longer. But let's find out. So we're nicely established on final. I don't know why the landing checklist is missing. It shouldn't. So getting a little low here. But most importantly, let's get a steady descent.
40, 30.
Okay, flare, idle, decrab. Lovely. Okay, flaps 3. Stabilize engines at 50. Set takeoff thrust, which is full toga for the go-around. And rotate at V approach. Positive climb, gear up, decrab the airplane. And here we go. That was fun. Alright, reaching 1300. Set climb thrust, flaps 1. Okay, activate approach phase. And then flight directors off. Bird on. Set downwind track 150. And then we can start our downwind turn again. That's how I love flying these. Okay, we can prepare the chrono for our next downwind. And then let's quickly do direct, center fix, radial in, insert. And with that, our airplane is already prepared for the next touch and go. Now let's take a very quick moment to review this landing. I initiated the flare at 25 feet and the nose came up very nicely. However, I didn't really feel a nose down moment at all. Now, there may be some differences here between the A320 and the A330, because the A320 has an artificial nose down moment, aka it's introduced by the fly-by-wire system, while the A330 has a natural one when the stabilizers enter ground effect. But on the 330 you really need to consciously pull on that stick. Which you need to do on other A320 add-ons as well, by the way, so I kinda tend to say that that may be realistic. But let's find out. So we're back on the downwind track. We wait until we're on the beam position, and then we're going to start timing. The 17 seconds from last time have worked very well. It's just an awesome strong wind. It's even just 15 seconds on this one because we have more or less 30 knots tailwind. So that's our landing runway. Looks like we got traffic in front of us, but that's fine. We'll let him overtake. Okay, so we're more or less being the threshold right now. Timing. 15 seconds this time. And flaps 2. Speed check, flaps 2. Okay, here's 15 seconds. Start on the base turn, 25 degrees angular bank. Set runway track. And here we go, 325 is set. Then gear down, flaps 3. So we are going to do another flap full landing, and this time I really want to see the airplane pitch itself down from 30 feet onwards. Okay, flaps full please. So, short base. To time the final turn, if you take the ground speed and divide it by half, that's basically the distance you need for your final turn. So, around 0.7 miles, which is where we're at right now. Then you do a 25-degree bank and you should end up... Yeah, take care of that, please, auto thrust. And then you should end up exactly on the center line.
Speed.
See? That works pretty well. Okay, we're on the puppy, so let's go into our 3-degree descent. Looks wonderful. So, same thing again. And this time, I will intentionally delay flaring the aircraft. This will result in a positive landing, but I want to see that nose down moment from the fly-by-wire system. Because on the last one, there wasn't much of it. So we're established on the final now. I'm doing minimal control inputs. Let me show you the side stick. The only stuff I'm correcting for is some of the turbulence. But you can see with how little input you can actually fly an airplane like this.
50, 40, 30,
Nothing?
20.
Okay, nose down is there. Okay, flaps 3. And now let me show you the side stick on the rotation. So, stabilize, take off. So, at VRAF, rotate about 2/3 aft stick, and very nice. The rotation is really good now. The rotation is really good now. Alright, let's do one more, and this is going to be a config 3 landing. So, reaching 1300. Set climb thrust, flaps 1. Activate approach phase. Then fly directors off, bird on, set downwind track. This time let's do a right hand pattern, just to make it a bit more interesting. And if everything goes right, this will be the last of our 3 patterns. That way we have 3 takeoffs and landings with the aircraft, which is what you need to be allowed to transport passengers. So, auto brake comes on low, config 3 is selected, down there and up here. Then direct 2, center fix, radial in, insert. Now obviously we do need the extended center line on the other side. But it doesn't let us access the fix info page. Oh, we can do it from down here. Interesting. Okay. Ain't gonna complain about that. So we got 235 in there, so 055 is the opposite. Here we go. Okay, so we have that 40 knots of tailwind, so that's 5 seconds downwind. Seems like it, huh? Interesting. Alright, so where's the threshold? There it is. We're approximately a beam. Start the timing. And flaps 2. So that's 5 seconds. Starting the base turn. Starting a descent. Gear down. Spoilers are armed. Wonderful. And let's not descend too quickly here. Flaps 3. Speed checked. Flap 3. I'm going to zoom out a little bit again so that you guys can see my side stick movements down here. Because if there is one lesson that I want you guys to take away from this, it's a fly-by-wire aircraft. That means you don't need to rape the controls. Okay, so 135 knots ground speed, that means we turn inbound at, 0.7 miles again. Our runway is over here. Okay, 1.0. Poppy is inside, still showing 4 wide, so let's descend a bit quicker. And here's 0.7. Again, look at my side stick movements while I'm controlling the plane here. Barely any input. So 25 degrees of bank. Okay, landing checklist. Landing checklist complete. Alright, and there's our runway. We're on the Poppy, so let's establish a 3-degree descent. Again, just short inputs. So, put the bird on the 3-degree line when you're on the Poppy. Then nothing can go wrong. Okay, so this time we aim to make it perfect. Flare.
Retard.
Idle. Overflared a bit. Just hold the pitch. Touchdown. Okay, that's fine. So, spoilers. Reverse green. Decel. And that's how it's done. Notice my rudder pedal worked down there as well, by the way. I'm not doing stuff like this, which most flight simulators are. I'm simply doing smooth and constant inputs. And that's the key to operating an airplane smoothly. Now, one last piece of feedback from this last landing here, before we are going to close the video. And that was the pitch on final approach. So we were at more or less a typical A320's landing weight. Let's just quickly go down here, MCU, menu, config, and fuel. You can see we're at 64 tons of gross weight at the moment. And we had a pitch of about 3 degrees on the final with config 3. That was maybe a little bit too low. I would expect something more in the region of 4 to 5 degrees of pitch with a config 3 approach. So 3 degrees is a little bit low for my taste. But then again, others may say different. What ultimately counts is the books. And if you're wondering how you can find out what pitch you should actually have, then I do recommend a look into the Flight with Unreliable Airspeed chapter, where you can find information like this. So you will find that in the QRH, I'm not actually sure if Fenix has anything like this over here, but if we go Documents and Fenix CFM QRH, then in here we should theoretically be able to find something like that. So here we are, unreliable speed indication procedure, then final approach at a 3-degree descent path, and you can see that is done for config 3, and it wants a 4-degree pitch down there. We were between 70 to 60 tons, so about 52% N1. And that's with landing gear up. Let's see, do we have one with landing gear down? No, we don't. Okay. But you get the idea. 4 degrees pitch is what you should have under these conditions. Well, and that's everything I got for you today. Let me know your feedback in the comments underneath the video. Also let me know how you like that I combined this kind of in a traffic pattern tutorial as well as analyzing the flight dynamics. What I can say is that, in form of a conclusion, the airplane rotates very, very nicely now. It really feels good during rotation. The en route maneuvering felt natural. I didn't need any slope or anything in my controls. It just did what it should and flew exactly how I expected it to fly. And then on final approach, you really don't need as much backstick anymore as you used to beforehand. Now, this may just take another 20 or 30 landings to get completely used to. I would say it is more realistic than what they had previously. It's not exactly the same as I would expect it to be from my A330 background, but then again, it's two different aircraft types. And obviously this is not a heavy, so there is a lot less inertia that you need to brake with a flare. So just a bit of backstick and the airplane flares very nicely. You can control it very nicely in terms of where you want to put it onto the ground. That's something that we can absolutely say over here with this update. Pitch on final with flaps full seemed pretty good. With config 3 was a little bit too little pitch in my opinion. But then again, let's not overdo things over here. Grossly, the values were pretty accurate, and that is what we're mostly looking for, isn't it? So, that's going to be everything for today's video. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I do hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Leave your feedback in the comments below, and as always, like, comment and subscribe. And if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.